Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something that you might not have heard of before. Strange loops. Have you ever felt like your brain just keeps getting stuck in this rut, like replaying the same anxieties or negative thoughts? Well, that's actually a strange loop in action. And get this, understanding them could actually be the key to becoming bulletproof to criticism.
That's interesting. What's really fascinating is that strange loops are more common than we might think. They're these kind of self-contradictory feedback loops that can pop up anytime we try to define something in terms of itself, like that classic "this statement is false" paradox.
Okay, I think I get it. So like that old all Cretans are liars
Yeah,
paradox.
exactly. If the Cretan who's speaking is telling the truth, then they must also be lying.
Yeah, talk about a mental pretzel. But how does this paradox stuff connect to, say, my boss giving me negative feedback?
Well, it all comes down to the models that we build in our minds. We use models to understand reality, whether those are scientific theories or just our personal beliefs about the world. But here's the thing. All those models are based on assumptions, metaphors, even plain old guesswork sometimes.
So you're saying that even our most cherished beliefs might not actually be the absolute truth. Ouch, that's a humbling thought.
It is, but it's also incredibly liberating. Take Newtonian physics, for example. That was considered rock solid for centuries, until Einstein came along and showed us a completely different way of looking at the universe.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
If even scientific models can be wrong, then my own personal model of how the world works might need some tweaking, especially when it comes to handling criticism.
Exactly. And one of the biggest obstacles to actually dissolving those strange loops is that we're all operating inside of what Robert Anton Wilson called reality tunnels. Basically, these are filters shaped by our own culture and our own experiences and our own beliefs, and those determine what we perceive as real and what we perceive as important.
So it's kind of like everyone's walking around wearing these tinted glasses, and we're all seeing slightly different versions of reality.
Precisely. Think about the dog Gary Owen in James Joyce's Ulysses. One character sees him as this dangerous beast, while another character views him as a sweet, almost human companion. It's the same dog, completely different perceptions based on their own individual reality tunnels.
That makes so much sense. No wonder we can sometimes have such wildly different reactions to the same event. We're literally not seeing the same thing.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. These reality tunnels are basically breeding grounds for strange loops. Because we're filtering information through all of our preconceived notions, we're more likely to get trapped in those self-contradictory feedback loops, especially when it comes to criticism.
Hold on, I need to catch my breath here. So you're saying that my personal reality tunnel is basically setting me up to get stuck in these negative thought patterns when someone critiques me? That's a bit unsettling.
It can be, but recognizing this is actually the first step to breaking free. Once we understand how those reality tunnels influence our perceptions, we can start to question those perceptions and become more objective in our responses.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light here. But how do these reality tunnels actually form? What's going on in our brains that makes us cling so tightly to our own interpretations of the world?
To answer that, we have to delve into the world of neuroscience. You see, our brains are constantly bombarded with all this sensory input, and they have to make sense of it all somehow. So what they do is they filter and interpret that input, adding and subtracting information to create a coherent narrative.
So our brains are kind of like these master storytellers, weaving together a narrative of reality from all the messy, fragmented data they receive.
That's a great way to put it. But here's the thing. Sometimes, in order to create that smooth, coherent narrative, our brains have to fill in gaps and make assumptions, even distort information to fit our existing beliefs and expectations.
Wait a minute, are you saying our brains are basically making stuff up?
Not consciously, of course. But there's a famous anecdote about President Roosevelt that perfectly illustrates this phenomenon. Apparently, Roosevelt was whispering a confession to his guests, but no one could actually hear what he was saying. Yet everyone later swore they understood perfectly, just filling in the gaps based on their own assumptions about what he might confess.
Whoa, that's mind-blowing. So just like those guests convinced they heard Roosevelt's confession, we often misinterpret criticism because our strange loops are just filling in the gaps with our own insecurities and preconceived notions.
Precisely. And this is where becoming aware of those strange loops and understanding their origins in our reality tunnels becomes crucial. It's the key to stepping outside those self-imposed limitations and responding to criticism with more clarity and resilience.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of this connects. But if our brains are so good at filtering information and creating these reality tunnels, How do we even begin to break free?
Well, the good news is that while our brains may be predisposed to creating these loops, they're also incredibly adaptable. By understanding how these strange loops form, we can start to consciously dissolve them and become more bulletproof to criticism. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've established that our brains are kind of wired to streamline information, sometimes maybe even at the cost of accuracy. But don't worry, becoming aware of these strange loops is already a huge step towards dissolving them.
Oh, good. That's a relief.
Yeah, think of it like noticing a rip current before you get swept away.
Okay, that's a good analogy. But just knowing about rip currents doesn't magically make them disappear, right? How do we actually break free from those mental patterns? Especially when it comes to, like, handling criticism.
Well, think back to those reality tunnels that we discussed. They're not fixed structures, they're more like habits of perception. And just like any habit, they can be changed with conscious effort.
So it's about kind of retraining our brains to perceive things differently, especially when it comes to feedback and criticism.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful tools for this is actually mindfulness. You've probably heard the term before, but in this context, mindfulness is about observing your thoughts and emotions without judgment, almost like a scientist studying data.
Oh, okay, I see. So instead of getting swept away by that wave of self-doubt when I get a negative comment,
Yeah.
I should try to just notice it without immediately labeling it as truth.
Exactly. It's like creating a little space between the stimulus, the criticism, and your reaction. That space allows you to choose a more helpful response instead of automatically spiraling into a strange loop.
Yeah, I can see how that would be helpful. But let's be real. Sometimes criticism cuts deep, especially if it triggers our insecurities. How do we stay mindful in those moments when our emotions are just running high?
That's where questioning your assumptions comes in. We all have these deeply ingrained beliefs about ourselves, often formed in childhood, that can make us hypersensitive to criticism. These beliefs actually become the lens through which we interpret feedback, often magnifying the negative and filtering out the positive.
Oh, so if I have this deep-seated belief that I'm just not good enough, any criticism is going to feel like a personal attack, even if it's constructive.
Exactly. That belief becomes fuel for the strange loop, amplifying the negative and making you more resistant to change. But by bringing those underlying beliefs into conscious awareness, you can actually start to challenge their validity.
So it's like saying, okay, that this person is saying X, but is that actually true? Or am I just filtering it through my own insecurities and past experiences?
Exactly. And the more you practice this, the more you realize that a lot of those deeply held beliefs are just stories we've been telling ourselves, not objective truths.
That's a really powerful insight. It's like realizing you've been wearing these glasses with a smudged lens your whole life, and then suddenly you can see the world in a whole new light.
It's a truly liberating experience. And another powerful technique for breaking free from those strange loops is actually seeking out diverse perspectives. We tend to surround ourselves with people who share our views, which can create an echo chamber, and that can reinforce our existing beliefs, even the harmful ones.
Yeah, it's comfortable to be around people who just agree with us all the time. But it can also make us blind to our own blind spots.
Exactly. But when we actively seek out perspectives that challenge our own show, it forces us to stretch our thinking, consider new possibilities, become more open to feedback, even if it's uncomfortable.
So it's like going on a mental adventure, exploring new terrains of thought, expanding our reality tunnels.
Precisely. And this willingness to explore different viewpoints is crucial for becoming bulletproof to criticism. Because when you realize that there are actually multiple valid perspectives on any given situation, criticism loses its power to sting. It becomes simply one data point among many, not the definitive judgment on your worth.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like realizing that the critic is just one person with their own unique perspective, not the ultimate authority on your value or abilities.
Exactly. And this leads us to another powerful tool for dissolving strange loops: humor. When we can actually laugh at the absurdity of our own mental patterns, it takes away their power to control us.
So instead of getting defensive or beating myself up when I get negative feedback, I should try to just find the humor in this situation.
Precisely. It's about not taking yourself or the criticism too seriously. Because at the end of the day, we're all just bumbling through this thing called life, making mistakes, learning as we go. And a little laughter can go a long way in diffusing the tension and keeping things in perspective.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like saying, hey, this criticism might sting a little, but it's not the end of the world. I'm going to learn from it and grow from it and maybe even have a good laugh along the way.
That's the spirit. And this ability to find humor in the face of adversity is a key element of becoming bulletproof to criticism. Because when you can laugh at yourself and your imperfections, you disarm your critics and you liberate yourself from the need to be perfect.
That's such a freeing concept. It's like saying, hey, I'm human. I make mistakes, and that's okay. I'm not going to let the fear of judgment hold me back from being my authentic self.
Exactly. And this acceptance of your imperfections, combined with the willingness to learn and grow from feedback, is the foundation of true resilience. It allows you to take criticism in stride and extract the valuable nuggets and discard the rest without letting it derail you.
Wow, this has been incredibly insightful. I'm starting to see how dissolving these strange loops isn't just about handling criticism better. It's about becoming more confident and resilient in all areas of life.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about cultivating a mindset of growth, embracing challenges as opportunities for learning, and realizing that your worth is not defined by external judgments. And the more you practice these techniques, the more you'll find yourself effortlessly navigating those mental traps and responding to criticism with grace and clarity.
This is all so empowering. I feel like I'm finally starting to understand how to break free from those negative thought patterns and become truly bulletproof to criticism. Okay, so we've talked about mindfulness and questioning our assumptions and seeking out diverse perspectives and even using humor to kind of diffuse those strange loops. It sounds like there's a lot we can actively do to become more resilient to criticism. But is there anything else, anything deeper that can help us truly become bulletproof?
You've hit upon a really fascinating point. While those techniques that we discussed are incredibly effective, there's also a more fundamental shift in perspective that can make all the difference. And that shift involves understanding a concept that might seem completely unrelated at first: quantum physics.
Wait, quantum physics? I thought we were talking about psychology and personal growth. How does the world of subatomic particles relate to, like, my boss's annoying feedback?
It's all about challenging our assumptions about reality. Quantum physics shows us that the world at its most fundamental level is far weirder and more uncertain than our everyday experience suggests. Particles can exist in multiple states at once. Things can be connected across vast distances in ways that just defy classical physics. And even the act of observation can influence the outcome of events.
Okay, my brain is already starting to hurt. But I'm intrigued. Are you saying that there's a connection between the uncertainty of the quantum world and the uncertainty we face in our own lives, especially when it comes to criticism?
Exactly. Quantum physics teaches us that certainty is an illusion, even at the most fundamental level of reality. And recognizing this can be incredibly liberating when it comes to handling criticism. Because if even the building blocks of the universe are subject to uncertainty and change, then why should our own perceptions and beliefs be any different?
So instead of clinging to this idea that I need to have all the answers or be perfect all the time, I can just embrace the fact that uncertainty is a natural part of life, and even of my own identity.
Precisely. And this acceptance of uncertainty can be a really powerful antidote to the strange loops that keep us trapped in negative self-talk and overreactions to criticism. It allows us to detach from the need to be right or have the final say or control how others perceive us.
Wow, that's a huge shift in perspective. It's like saying, okay, I don't need to have all the answers, and that's okay. I can be open to new information and different viewpoints, and even to the possibility that I might be wrong sometimes.
Exactly. And this openness, this willingness to embrace uncertainty is the foundation of true learning and growth. It allows you to view criticism not as a threat, but as an opportunity to expand your understanding and to refine your perspective and to become a more well-rounded individual.
I'm starting to see how this quantum perspective can be incredibly empowering. It's like saying, hey, the world is a messy, unpredictable place, and that's okay. I don't need to have everything figured out to be worthy or valuable.
And that's a message I think we all need to hear sometimes, because in a world that often celebrates certainty and perfection, it's easy to get caught up in those strange loops of self-doubt and criticism. But by embracing the inherent uncertainty of life and even of our own identities, we can break free from those limitations and tap into a deeper well of resilience and self-acceptance.
This has been an amazing journey. We've gone from the paradoxes of ancient Greece to the intricacies of the human brain, and even to the mind-bending world of quantum physics. And through it all, we've discovered that becoming bulletproof to criticism is not about building thicker skin, but about cultivating a more flexible, adaptable, and ultimately more compassionate way of being in the world.
Beautifully put. It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress, constantly evolving and learning, and that criticism, when viewed through the lens of compassion and curiosity, can be a powerful catalyst for growth.
So to our listeners out there, remember this. The next time you find yourself facing criticism, just take a deep breath. Remember the uncertainty principle and ask yourself, is this feedback truly a reflection of my worth? Or is it simply one perspective within a vast and ever-changing universe of possibilities?
And if you can approach those moments with a sense of curiosity and a willingness to learn, and maybe even a touch of humor, you'll find yourself not only becoming bulletproof to criticism, but also embracing the beautiful messiness of being human.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of strange loops and the art of handling criticism. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep embracing the wonderful uncertainty of it all.